Well, it might be one of the most remote parts of the country, but the eyes of the nation will be on northeast Arnhem Land over the next 2 months. This week, the Prime Minister announced NASA will launch 3 rockets from the region starting later this month. The Prime Minister also confirmed he will attend the Garma Festival at the end of July. To discuss this, I caught up with Yothu Yindi Foundation Chief Executive and Garma Festival Director, Denise Bowden. Denise Bowden, thanks so much for joining us today. The last 2 Garma festivals have been cancelled. You must be pretty excited about this year's event.
Yeah, we're wrapped. We're pretty excited. There's a heap of programming that we're bringing in the 2-year absence since Garma was here in northeast Arnhem Land. So we're pretty excited, yes.
So tell us about the history of Garma, how it began and what exactly it is and what it means.
Garma Festival is a highlight of Yolngu culture. It's a real celebration of culture and song and dance and all of the remote components of living in a very remote bush setting. It began as a small barbecue and has morphed into what is now a national event. The whole of Australia is coming to northeast Arnhem Land. We're really thrilled about that.
There's also a political aspect to Garma, the key forum and the discussions that take place there. We've heard the Prime Minister was in Darwin this week and he's confirmed he's going to be at Garma. What can we expect to hear discussed?
Well, absolutely everything to do with Indigenous policy will be discussed and we're thrilled to hear that the Prime Minister's coming. We'd love to see the new incoming Education Minister at the Garma Festival too. Invitations have gone out. It'll be a political mosh pit, I imagine, Matt, and lots and lots of policy discussions to be made. Obviously there's been a 2-year absence of it. It's been out of the national news. We'd like to put it back into the national news frame and ensure that Garma this year arrives with a lot of positive outcomes for our future.
And obviously the voice to Parliament, the Prime Minister committed to that on election night. Do you think that's going to be a key part of the discussions that we'll hear at Garma this year?
We would expect so, yes, absolutely. There is some thinking that the Prime Minister will come with some song and dance and some really significant announcements this year. So let's make sure that those outcomes are achieved this year at Garma.
It's been a big week for northeast Arnhem Land. When the Prime Minister was here this week, he announced that those first rockets will be launched from that site at Gulkula on the 26th of June. Tell us a bit about the history of that project and the involvement of the Gumatj Corporation and the Yothu Yindi Foundation in what we're seeing NASA do out there in northeast Arnhem Land at the moment.
So that was an old ELDO space station, and so it's almost like history has repeated itself. It's come back into form. So I believe that it's the positioning of where that Gulkula site is at the moment that makes it quite appealing for these rockets and satellites to be launched. The Gumatj people have been long historically involved in that, and you'll see through the songlines that there's quite a number of cultural components that are built into that. Astronomy, Seven Sisters, Southern Cross, it's all dotted throughout a Yolngu cultural knowledge centre and a really significant knowledge base. We're hoping to plug that straight back into an education curriculum. In fact, we've actually done that in the 2 years since Garma's passed us by. The Gumatj people and their grandparents, they've all been a part of all of this astronomy component. It's really exciting. I believe Munguroi Yunupingu many years ago was Gullarwa Yunupingu's father. Was commissioned to paint a bark petition, and it has Buzz Aldrin all through it. Garma will talk about all of those elements this year. It's quite fascinating.
It's one of the projects that the Gumatj are doing out there, but there are many projects that they've been doing over the years, haven't they, that a lot of people probably don't know about, particularly when it comes to creating real employment opportunities for local Yolngu people.
Yeah, I think one of those examples is a timber mill out that way. Really significant business enterprise developed there over many years now. The board of the Gumatj Corporation and those families have been integral in developing those business enterprises. Significantly, Gullarwa Yunupingu, our chairman, and again his brother Jawa, have been well built into that process to date. So
you've talked a lot about education. About 12 months ago, we were out in northeast Arnhem Land at Gunyangara for the opening of the Dupamabaka School. Tell us a bit about that project and the success that you've been having.
So the Yothu Yindi Foundation has created an independent education pipeline out in northeast Arnhem Land. There's three parts of that education pipeline. The first is transition to 6, and you'll find Dupamabaka has just celebrated its first birthday out there at Gunyangara. That has been a massive success considering that we're getting a 90% school attendance rate. Tells us something right is happening out that way. So really, really proud of that. You'll see that there are Yolngu people all through those classrooms, that it's not necessarily inside learning, it's also outside learning, and how the curriculum incorporates Indigenous culture inside that learning experience for our kids is exactly what's getting 90% return to our school attendance figures.
So when you say you're at 90% now, what sort of base is that coming from, and what is it that's driving those kids to suddenly become engaged in school and their education?
The cultural components is what has been missing. The curriculum has been missing, and therefore you're dealing with a deficit model where children are knocking on the education door and they're not bringing a strength-based approach to their learning. We've now factored in things like bilingual education. We've now factored in educational components that take kids out of the curriculum so that they're learning on country. We've also built Yolngu educators into the classrooms, and therefore they aren't coming with a piece of paper to say that they're teachers, certified teachers. It is a family-based learning model. We really want to be able to lift those school attendance figures. The second component, therefore, in that education pipeline means a secondary school through Studio Schools Australia. Jennifer Westacott is the chair of Studio Schools Australia, and Dr. Helen Drennan is the Studio Schools CEO. That is also a proven track model that has come across from June Oscar's area, actually. These are all proven at 90% school attendance rates.
So you've got transition to Year 6 at the moment. How long do you think before you can have a secondary school up and running, and do you have any plans beyond a secondary school?
Secondary school is going to be up and running very soon, but that is the work that is being done on the ground with Studio Schools Australia. If you come to the Garma Festival this year, you'll find out more about where that is at. The community engagement piece is incredibly important, as is the co-design elements of that model. So really staying true to the local community. The next component that should feed into the Garma Institute, and that's a tertiary adult learning facility. It's been referred to as a bush university. That curriculum is also incredibly important. We're doing that work with the University of Melbourne through Professor Marcia Langton and the Vice-Chancellor and Duncan Maskell at University of Melbourne. So all exciting. We don't think that the current education model actually works. So we've moved right away from that. And we don't want to be in a position where families are being blamed for not sending their children to school. We don't want to be in a position where students are being blamed for not attending. And we don't want to continue to see our kids being pushed through a juvenile justice system here in the Northern Territory that is looking at a 100% Indigenous detainees. It's unacceptable. We believe firmly at the Yothu Yindi Foundation that education is at the heart of making all of that change happen. Yothu is child and Yindi is mother. Yothu Yindi Foundation is responsible for our mother and children. We're responsible for making sure that we're putting in place the best building blocks that we possibly can.
So the idea, you want to get kids engaged in education, but the idea is that one day a kid who grows up in northeast Arnhem Land will be able to be educated from transition right the way through to the end of university.
Our vision aligns perfectly with the Arnhem Space Centre. We'd like to see Yolngu people launching those rockets, being a part of those senior leadership positions out that way. We are building the next generation of workforce, and we're doing it in a culturally responsive and culturally appropriate manner.
Well, Denise, it's great work that you're doing out there, and we look forward to the Garma Festival kicking off on the 29th of July. Thanks very much for your time today.
Matt.